Hey, everybody, a little later than I wanted to be, but it was a full day. Sadly, the A's did not win. But we're not talking about the A's right now. We're talking about the Raiders. And focused on, this is the second live stream about the Raiders, but I'm focused on a question. And the question is, David, I told you it was time. Remember I said push the panic button, right? I told you this team was in trouble. Remember I said that? Some of you was like, there ain't nothing wrong with them. There is. They have a number of fundamental issues, the Raiders do. Now, I'm talking about on the field. I'm not talking about off the field right now. I'm talking about on the field. The roster's too old. The game plan beyond the script is too inflexible. And they don't have a pass rush. Hey, Black Lion is said, shaking my head. I just can't. I understand, man. It's painful. And it's painful because we're witnessing the collapse of the Raiders. I mean, all three phases of life. I mean, not just the game. You know, they're losing in relations with the public. I mean, in terms of, Oakland and the elected officials. They're getting their lunch handed to them in Vegas, being forced to spend money that really they don't have, or as much as they thought they were going to have. And then they're not performing on the field. And for the third week in a row, the Raiders have to sit back and watch Khalil Mack, or at least hear about the guy that they traded saving, either impacting a football game, as was the case his first game out, or helping to win the last two football games for the Bears. You know, I mean, Patrick and Blackman. Oh, Patrick, I got to do that. Hey, Patrick, do me a favor. Send me an email, just like a reminder. I'm going to do that. But I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? Because I have been out of my head busy. And that's no excuse. Got to take care of the stuff. You know what I'm talking about, the shares. But I digress. Backman says that's why the Raiders need the leadership. He says he's absolutely right. No, Patrick, I appreciate, love you for that, but it's not okay. I need to take care of the stuff like I used to, I'm just doing, the one-man band thing's got to go. I'm trying to get rid of it, but I'm trying to do all this stuff and everything else. All right, enough. YouTube Police says, what? I'm a Dolphin fan, but I feel bad for the Raiders. Why, YouTube Police? And welcome to Zenny62 on YouTube. Predator Kingdom, how you doing? He says, congrats to Matt Patricia on getting his first win. Thank you, Predator Kingdom. Yes, I second that. Congratulations to the Patriots' now former defensive coordinator, winning against his old team in fine fashion on Sunday Night Football just a moment ago. I was watching that. Did I just say as watching that? Well, yeah, as watching that. NASA. I was watching it. I watched it. Then I had to watch Game Day Prime. Deion Sanders, prime time. Because I wanted to hear what prime time was going to say about the Raiders. They said nothing. No one uttered a word about the Raiders other than the score. And I think that's deliberate because none other than Ian Rappaport of NFL Network put out the news that you probably heard today because it was repeated on Sports Illustrated, all over the place, except by my blog. I'm repeating it here. But, but basically that Gruden only talks to his coaching people. And so because of that, and not Reggie's people, and so he's causing division. All right? But before we get to that, let's hear from Gruden. Let's hear from Gruden in his post-game press conference. I'm not going to turn the camera around toward him. Let's just hear the words.
There today, I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. It's a tough loss again.
Seemed like you had things going your way a little bit, but you gave up a lot of big plays.
Yeah, we certainly did. That's how I just summed it up. We got hurt on a jet sweep. We got hurt on a trick play, and we didn't finish some drives in the red zone. That's the story of the game. Although there are a lot of stories behind the scenes.
John, can you put your finger on what's going on in the fourth quarter? You guys have been outscored, I believe, 37-3 now.
It's my responsibility to fix it.
Was the heat a factor out there?
It affected me.
Affected you?
It was hot. It's hot for them, too. We lost some players. You know, Dwayne Harris had an IV. Jordy had to go back, return punts. Donald Penn got hurt. We played our third left tackle most of the game today, our right tackle, I should say. Hopefully we get some men well. You just saw man-to-man coverage. He decided to take a shot, and unfortunately it didn't work out.
Okay. Would you like to see them keep running the ball, or you guys will run the ball a little bit more?
Yeah, we tried to run the ball. We saw a lot of different coverages and different blitzes, and we had them off balance. We moved the ball very well. We just got fooled that particular play. The guy made a great play in one-on-one coverage.
How disappointed are you?
We have a lot of work to do here, and we're going to continue to work. I'm proud of the way we're competing. We played 3 teams, I think, that might be undefeated. I don't know. Played 3 good football teams, and we played them hard. But we got a lot of work to do here. We'll continue to work, and we'll get this show on the road here hopefully soon.
The optimism that players have said you've had after the first 2 games change at all now that it's 3 or no?
I'm going to get on the airplane and get ready for the next one.
What
was that? We're at the 1-yard line. You know, we ran a wedge play to the fullback. Looked great on film. We just didn't get it done.
That's to your guys' faith and keep on that third one. Similar route last week in the flat.
He's a 240-pound fullback. I mean, it's less than a half a yard. You know, we didn't get it done. It's bottom line.
People adjust, but you've been so good on opening drives. You script right there. You just get frustrated why that doesn't continue.
Oh, we mishandled a couple balls. Honestly, on third down today, got in trouble in pass protection on a couple times. It's hard to go 80 yards in this league repeatedly against a good defense. And hopefully we start getting some turnovers and some returns in our special teams and stuff, some better field position. But that pretty much summarizes it.
What's your assessment of the special teams today?
I thought Nugent did well kicking the ball. I thought Johnny was up and down punting the ball. We had some penalties that really hurt us. Started us way, way behind in the field position. And all 3 phases, we got to all pick it up. And it starts with me. All right. Thanks, man.
Well, so there you have it. He took responsibility for what happened. And what more can you say? It sounded more like a wake. But, we'll get to your comments here. And Del Jr. says, hello, Raider Nation. I say hello back to you, speaking for myself. Arturo says, is this a rebuild year or what? It might take a year or two to get it right. Black Lion says, you killed our locker room. That's what's going on. And David Bagno says, that was unbelievable to me on the 1-yard line. You give it to Marshawn rather than your fullback. Yeah. Black Lion says, our leader is in Chicago because of Davis in Las Vegas. That's what's going on. Yeah, look, this is a case of arrogance without knowledge. All right. Let's take a very, very high view. I don't mean like, high, because I don't do that myself, but I've had marijuana maybe 9 times in my life. Okay. But I'm kidding. I am not kidding about that, but I'm kidding about the whole high thing. All right. Now, seriously, let's take a bird's eye view of this situation. You have two people, Mark Davis and John Gruden, who collectively have been away from the game of football. For Mark Davis, basically most of his life. He's been owner since just 2011, okay? And his dad was always the team owner, and yet he was hanging around. So he's only been involved in the game, 6 years? Well, what was it? 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 8. Okay, yeah, so there's 8 years, all right? So what you're saying is then you couldn't do that in your head? How do you feel like it? So I use my digits. Anyway, okay, so he's 8 years, right? 8 years in the league. And then Gruden has been away from the game for, a decade? So plus 11 years, all right? And so now you have a situation, mathematics aside, of two people who have a very powerful position, head coach and owner, who collectively have very little experience with the modern game. I remember Mark Davis told me, I don't want to hear about the past. I just want to pay attention to, the future. He told me that when I met him in 2013. Okay, fine. Gruden is just back in the game this year. He's been out for quite a while. And so what they have in common is this desire to say to you, hey, I know you don't. I'm going to prove to you that I'm going to get it done because I know you doubt me. As opposed to, hey, look, I'm new to this. I want to hear from fans of the past, the present. I want to have an all-hands effort. I want to build Oakland. I want to build a group. I want to build a team. And we move forward together, and a good idea can come from anybody, right? And then Gruden comes in. He comes in really saying the right things, but then once he gets into, he gave a signal that adjusting to how things are done today may be a bit of a struggle. But then he deals with players who, like Marquette King, have their own personalities. Gruden is not used to that, but he's always had a problem with flamboyant, puffy, proud, testifying black men. Okay? I mean, like Keyshawn Johnson. Remember how I used to argue on the sidelines with Key? I'm not saying he had that problem with every person. He didn't. But I'm saying that his history has been marked with that. And so what happens is that when he gets his first taste of men who are like that, what does he do? He gets rid of them. But they just happen to be, for the most part, say for Marshawn Lynch. If you get rid of Marshawn Lynch, you got a real problem. He's the heart and soul of the Raiders. But even then, you don't give it the ball to him. So my point is that he comes in not appreciating or sending the message that he truly appreciates what other people have done. It's, I'm here that I know and you don't. All right? And we, including myself, were all ready to just anoint him the king and say, hey, he's going to march us in the Super Bowl. We all had high hopes because y'all want to believe. We all want to, but not y'all. We all do. We all want to be rooting for an organization that wins. That's just human nature. There's nothing wrong with that, folks. Those of you who might feel guilty for being on the way to bandwagon, don't. Okay? Those of you who want to feel upset about the way the regime has handled things that built this, yeah, it's quite right to do so. Like my mom said when I was who I'm visiting, she says, I'm glad they had that way, because even my mom sees it. My mom be 84 October 1st, and she says, they don't treat people right. Davis says he doesn't want to talk to you. And so why should anybody root for them? Why do you care? I said, well, it's part of what I do. I said, Mom, I can like the business without liking how it's ran. There's a difference. Very clean. It's not personal. It's only business, right? I can like Mark Davis personally, but I don't like the moves he makes. I can like John Gruden personally, and I do, but I don't like the coaching moves he makes. They're messing up the brand. They're messing up the brand. Okay? We had a better system under Jack Del Rio. Reggie GM needs to step up, and I'm going to get to that in a second. If John continues on the route, the ball, run the ball was working. And Anakala, how you doing? Black Lion says, times like this, I have given up drinking and smoking, laugh out loud, laughing to stop from crying. And Brett P says, good evening. I say good evening to you from St. Louis. You are. I am not. Chat Globe says, it's over. Black, hey, only 2% of the time has any team made the playoffs, the NFL playoffs, after an 0-3 start. Them's just the facts. So Clean Blart says, hey man, Raider fan, checking it. And Detective John Kimball, how are you, Detective? Says, are they being conservative with Carr? I think it's not so much that. Look, the Raiders have done a fantastic job of moving the ball when they're in their script, the first 15 plays, right? But it's quite obvious they have an adjustment problem when they get out of it. Hey, everybody, welcome to Zenny62. Nice to have you here. But okay, that's clear. As to the idea, Predator Keenum says this is a rebuild for Gruden. He might get rid of Carr and Cooper. There was no need to rebuild. As Christian said, they had a great team under Del Rio. Rebuilding was unnecessary. I think the problem is that Gruden didn't like what he perceived was a character issue that led to a 6-10 record. But what Gruden doesn't know how to do, apparently, is take the flamboyant, free-thinking, kind of world dervish black personality and employ that person as a partner rather than an employee and get the most out of them. And so as a result, hey, he's left with people who will do what he says, but that creates a dangerous spiral downward like this, okay? I do what you say. It doesn't work. You give me another game plan. It doesn't work. We lose. You give me another game plan. It doesn't work. We lose. Here's the rest of the spiral. So at some point, I stopped being excited about what you're telling me to do, even though I feign like I believe in what you're doing because I need to get paid as a player. And so right now, the Raiders are quite literally going through the motions. It's already panic time. It was panic time last week. Now we're in the thick of it. And here come the Cleveland Browns. Here come the Cleveland Browns. Okay. Into the Coliseum. Black Lion said they lied to us, saying they wanted to win a Super Bowl in Oakland. They're rebuilding for Vegas. But here's the thing, Black Lion. I've heard that again and again and again. It doesn't make any sense. You know why? Why are you going to say that you're rebuilding for Vegas if you're trying to sell luxury boxes and sponsorships? And clearly, you're not putting a product on the field that can even excite the city that you purport to be going to. That doesn't make any sense. And then let's double down on that more. You're saying to me that people in Las Vegas are going to have, faith. They have faith in God, more so than the Raiders. They're going to have faith that this Raiders regime can suddenly get religion in Las Vegas and put together a winning team because they have draft picks. To do what? Take those draft picks and trade them away for a wily, crafty veteran that's, when he catches the pass over the middle, is basically too slow to outrun the linebacker and score a touchdown? That was Jordy Nelson. Hey, folks, I remember Jordy Nelson in the 2010-2011 Super Bowl in Dallas. Remember how he torched the Steelers secondary and was hard to catch because he was a big guy? Well, he torched the Dolphins secondary and they got away from him. What do you have, like 250, he had 139 yards receiving the first half, 159 yards receiving the first half. Wow. Something else. Ishby says, I remember a long time ago, I'm reading this comment here, the Raiders had the best win percentage in the league. Just win, baby. I remember those days too. Commitment to excellence. Not commitment to self. These Raiders are commitment to self, not commitment to excellence. It's more like it's about me. How are you treating me? Are you giving me what I want? Me. It's not excellence. Big difference. It's a parsec difference, okay? And so Detective John Kimball says, was Bill Musgrave the cause of Carr's 2016 success? Bill, I think it was a combination of things. Detective. Musgrave, I think, was an important component in the way he formed his offense. We have to give credit to the Raiders' timely defense, even though I wasn't cool on the whole two-gapping, and I feel that that two-gapping style of defense didn't serve the Raiders well at all. I like the single gap style this time. The trouble is that the single gap style really cries for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack would have thrived in this system. As much as he's thriving in the Bears system, Khalil Mack would have done even better in the Raiders system. And that's what hurts so much. Okay. So G. Taylor says Vontae Davis quit 2 weeks after the Raiders. Black Lion says, but that's the thinking of Mark Davis. Like you said, he is an egomaniac. I never said he was an egomaniac. Those words have never come out of my mouth, okay? I don't think he's an egomaniac at all. I'm not calling a name. My truck with Mark Davis is that Mark assumes people are against him when they are for him. And he chooses up sides, and he makes these imaginary walls. When you are a fan of an organization, you are predisposed to like that organization. Mark should take advantage of that and be nice to everybody, but he hasn't been. And this is what's happening now. Again, between the JPA on Friday and then Hornbuckle on Thursday and this and how people are reacting and how the NFL Network basically stabbed the Raiders in the collective back this morning. Okay? All of that, it just doesn't come for nothing, folks. It comes because of the way they've been treating people. 2 + 2 = 4. And they have built a gigantic reservoir of ill will. And at some point, that karma gets you, and that's what's going on. And it is sad. I don't say this with glee. This is sad stuff. Because you know it's coming. Any decent human being can see that that's coming. Anybody. It's not a matter of how much money you give organizations. No. Are you nice to people when they're nice to you? Now I can say that, like, for example, Will Kiss, head of PR, awesome. I love the Raiders people. These people are family to me. That's what hurts so much, okay? Mark Davis didn't need to rip the family apart of people. I don't profess to be like the huge Raider or anything. I love my city, Oakland. The Raiders are a gigantic part of that and have been a gigantic part of my life going back to when I was 15 years old. So it hurts. It hurts because you can see it coming. You can see it coming, and it's kind of like, yeah. And you hope it doesn't come. I hoped it didn't come. Why otherwise? Why would I spend time drawing up plays for Gruden and everything else? Because you want to help, just like thousands of other people. You want to help them win because that's what you want to see. That's what fans do. That's what fanatics do, right? Sad stuff, man. Excuse me. It really is. So it's Christian Adali says, if we don't get a W on Sunday, I'll be at that game then. Reggie needs to make a change in the front office, starting with John. I think John needs to, and I'm going to go talk about the NFL Network thing, because that was, you know what? Someone planted that story, and I think someone from inside the Raiders planted that story. And I can't see it. I can't see it getting. It's a nasty thing to do. Because now you have a picture of an organization that has its problems inside the front office and on the field, and they're going to waste their time trying to figure out who did that. But also the league put that out there. All right? Because the league put that out there via Ian Rappaport. And notice something. Their evening programs don't talk about the Raiders at all. They not only didn't mention the Raiders in terms of color commentary, they didn't have anybody on from the Dolphins either. It was like, let's leave the Raiders alone. We trashed them, undoubtedly because somebody with the Raiders said, hey, what are you doing? But the simple fact that the NFL Network did that should be a sign that the league itself believes there's something wrong with the Raiders. And I believe that they've had plans for the Raiders, and somewhere along the line, these plans are not going the way the league wants. By contrast, the LA plans are going, for the most part, the way the league wants. Okay, I'm going to get to something Goodell said in a second. I want to go back and read your commentary and then come back to what Goodell said. Welcome to Zenny62, everybody. Blackman says, a warning sign was when Gruden said he wanted to send the game back to 98. And, that was a warning sign, Patrick. I agree with you. At first, I thought I knew what he meant from a standpoint of a classic form of strategy. But apparently, there's a way that he thinks about the game. But John doesn't understand the way players think is changed, because we have a different generation who grew up differently, who are used to a football environment where the high school plays are actually more advanced than the NFL plays. And when I say that to people, they look at me like I'm like, Monster Zero, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, okay? Godzilla, king of the monsters, right? Because they say, well, that's not true. Like Mayock says, well, they have more time to practice it. Wrong way of thinking. I'm talking about Mike Mayock because I interviewed him on this subject a few years ago. Wrong way of thinking. It's not that you have more time to practice a particular approach. It's how advanced the approach is in terms of its flexibility at taking it at exploiting a defense's obvious structural weaknesses. For example, let's take the Rams game, okay? The Rams came out in a kind of an Oklahoma look, nose tackle, defensive ends masquerading as defensive tackles, slightly inside at times, and defensive ends, a true Oklahoma look. That was the first half, and they varied it with sometimes they're playing 8 in the box. They were daring the Raiders to run. Sometimes they had 9 in the box, daring the Raiders to run. And we're talking about an organization, a team, that doesn't have just, fly-by-nights. They've got Nakam Sue, Aaron McDonald, Aaron, right? Okay. And what do the Raiders do? They run. It's not, hey, check to a play action, right? No. Or this happened a couple of occasions. Both defensive tackles outside the guards on 3rd down, 3rd and 8. One high middle linebacker, actually a defensive back, and nothing else. And a gigantic hole that just screams, you know what? Use this space to get a first down. Do the Raiders? No. That is but one of a number of examples of the offense's inflexibility. Okay. So, all right. The high in dunk, that's his name. It says Musgrave's offense brought out the best of Carr. The problem was Musgrave would run the ball in passing situations, and so he got canned. Yeah, he did that. I remember I was watching, remember the Denver game of Sunday Night Football? We won, and we had 3rd and 1, and Musgrave passed not once, not twice, but 3 times in 3rd and 1. Raider legend Morris Bradshaw and I are watching the game in the those seats outside the West Side Club, and we're yelling at the screen like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" It's hilarious. Okay, absolutely hilarious. Yeah, Musgrave did that, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't say, "Well, gee, you kind of did this, and so therefore you did this one thing we don't like, which overshadows the 99 other things." That's essentially what was done when they got rid of Musgrave. Is that smart? No. And so Behind Dunk says we need to assert the vertical passing game, Raider football. I think we need to assert smart football. But here's the thing. I don't think the Raiders' offense is really the problem. In the Raiders' offense isn't the problem in terms of its scheme areas when they're in their script. When they're in the script, they're just fine. The problem is how they adjust when they get out of that script. Because they've scored on their first drive for each of the games they played in thus far. And there's no reason to believe that trend won't continue. But what happened, and you would say, why is it happening? That when they get out of their planned list of plays, they don't perform well. The answer is simple. Because they don't properly evaluate what the opposing defense is doing, set up a template. In other words, all right, you've got what the defense is actually doing versus what you thought the defense was going to do. What you think the defense is going to do is basically your null hypothesis. Anyone here ever take a research course? When you were in elementary school or whatever. Here's something you need to remember if you haven't. A null hypothesis is, particularly for those of you who are teenagers watching this, a null hypothesis is what you think something is going to happen. Educated guess based on study. So you have a game plan which is set up on a series of null hypotheses about what you believe the opposing defense is going to do. In that case, we're talking about Raiders offense with respect to the opposing team's defense, right? So when you click off your plays, you should be monitoring what the defense is doing, actually doing versus your null hypothesis. And then where there's a difference, you adjust your game plan for what you're going to run after that set of plays is done in every situation, okay? And it's something that is a program. If you think about it, actually is a type of computer program where you can actually literally spit off these plays as a list. And, give your quarterback the flexibility of using them or not. Because the quarterback has the feel of the game, right? What happens is that by the time you get into halftime, you ought to have a list of what the plays are going to be for the next half. Is it different from your original game plan? Well, of course it's supposed to be. But it takes advantage of weaknesses that perhaps you didn't anticipate were going to be there, but they are there in the game. Okay. And you should have that software built, that way of communicating with between folks on the ground and folks in the sky, in the boxes, in terms of data transfer. People looking at the end zones. Is anyone looking at the line splits? Using those Microsoft Surface cameras, are you getting line splits? What do those line splits look like? If you don't get the end zone view, you're not getting a true view of what the defense or offense is doing. Splits and time motion studies mean everything. All of that needs to be factored in to how you evaluate. And then when you get into halftime, okay, if you have to say something, you leave it for 2 minutes. That's about it. Okay, 5. That's about it. Nah, not 5. 2 minutes. That's about it. But you should have an electronic system and a management style and a set of predetermined interpersonal relationships on your team, in your organization, all right, that allow you to prepare yourself for the second half of the game. And it's not clear to me, the Raiders have that. Just saying. I didn't say they don't. I say it's not clear to me. High and Dunk says, I agree. Oh, Detective John Kimball agrees with High and Dunk says, I agree. Turn Carr loose. What we're doing now seems like a slow death. And Patrick and Blackman says, Al Davis had that paranoia that everybody was against him. That gets old fast. It does, because we're in a situation where people are criticizing each other left and right on social media. And after all, it's kind of like, you know what? We all know we're not perfect. Thank you for the reminder. Now, how about that thing about us all getting along? In other words, like Rodney King said, can't we all get along? Right? The Raiders says Gruden just needs to come and state what he wants. He's doing with the Raiders. What's his vision? That's true. The Raiders says, and overall, I'm still not happy with Gruden. Black Lion Supreme says it's his ego that keeps him moving the team to Las Vegas and not playing Mac. He truly believes that the Raiders will be loved anywhere just because it's the Raiders, no matter what he's done, what he does to the team. And hey, Jamal Mills, how are you? Nice to see you. The Raiders says, and also, since the Raiders have been garbage for so many years in Oakland, still all of a sudden they're supposed to win and do great in Vegas. He's writing. He says, how would that look to fans? Questions that there always be above the head of the franchise. The Raiders says, hello to everyone, too. Cowboy Wrestler, welcome. Cowboy Wrestler comes up with a hashtag fire Gruden, hashtag fire Davis. I come up with a hashtag let's get involved. Hashtag let's get involved. Okay. I don't call for anybody to be fired. I call for everybody to pull together like this. Okay. But hey, look, if the owner and the head coach are not embracing the fans, not saying, hey, you know what? Instead of Gruden saying, hey, look, we'll get this fixed, he'll say, you know what? You got ideas? Because he said it with me. I want to hear your ideas. You should say that to everybody. What's your idea? Let's make this a fun Phoenix rise from the ashes on the road to the playoffs this year. This is the time to give that speech. It's kind of like Bill Pullman, Independence Day, when all was lost. Looked like the United States was going to get torched by aliens. Comes out, gives that, stands on top of that tank, roaring, it's Independence Day. That's what Gruden needs to do, right? So, Cabarrus says Raiders are downright terrible. Baker Mayfield is going to destroy us. What next week? Just watch. I'll tell you what. If Baker Mayfield comes to the Coliseum and does that, oh, you know what? It'll be. First of all, I'll candidly say this. I'll be happy for Hugh because of the way he was treated, and I'm sure he's been looking forward to this for some time. And there's got to be something in him. He's got 10 days to prepare. There's got to be something in him where he's just saying, you know what? This can be our second win. And I deserve it. Cowboy Wrestler says Raiders are downright terrible. I got that one. And he says, by the way, hello everyone. He says Black Lion Supreme. Cowboy Wrestler says to Black Lion Supreme, are you ready to get those paper bags out? I know I am. Wow, the paper bags. He's calling for the paper bags. Cowboy Wrestler is. And Black Lions. And so anyway, I'm trying to read. This is interesting. He says, not the paper bag, CW, says Black Lion. Black Lion says, I said our locker rooms destroyed when they got rid of Mac. And we are seeing it right before our eyes. Cowboy Wrestler says, Black Lion Supreme, totally agree. I think today's show, Gruden has lost the locker room. I agree with you. He's lost more than the locker room. I'll get to that in a second. Mile High Raider says, do you think Mark Davis was cornered by the NFL to trade Mac to a bigger, no, I don't. To trade back to a bigger market and they would allow them to make the move to Vegas because it just doesn't make any sense? No, I don't think so. I know that the league has a vested interest in making sure all of its organizations reach a minimum local economic output, and the Raiders haven't been reaching that. And I believe the Raiders themselves felt that Vegas provided a better opportunity than the Bay Area. I disagree, but that's their thinking. I can say that the change in law and gambling is certainly on their side. And also the NFL as an organization is scared to death concerned about the decline in media rights fees. And you would say, Zinni, what are the decline in media rights fees? That's the amalgamated, total $22 billion network package. That money, this next go around, you're not going to see. If the NFL gets more than that, it'll be a miracle. I was about to say it like Charles Barkley says, miracle, terrible. It'll be a miracle because ESPN has been shedding employees and because they're shedding money because we're moving from television to these thingies. And do you realize that the most viewed media organization right now is Netflix? Yeah, Netflix. Netflix does not show any single live NFL game. Okay. And it's not hard to figure out why. The National Football League wants rights fees that Netflix does not want to pay. Again, the NFL has rights fees that Netflix does not want to pay. And at some point, look, the NFL, in terms of the fees paid to it, have reached more than moonshot levels. At some point, they had to come down. And this is something that's making them go down. There are some people in the league, like Jerry Jones, who believe that gambling on the players will make up that gap. Okay. And I know Commissioner Goodell has been talked into that. But the NFL has a clear future revenue problem before it that, if it doesn't handle it correctly, could spell its death. Not that people will stop playing football, but the money that the NFL has enjoyed command will be less. You can already see it. You can already see the problem in the empty seats. The brokers have taken over. It's hard for the average fan to get them. And when you lose people like that, you start losing viewership. Not ratings is a difference. You start losing viewership, it affects your pocketbook. Okay. Ratings are not the issue. People confuse ratings with viewership, folks. Viewership is like this. If let's say I have a party. I have 50 people over to watch a game. That's 50 people, right? But we're all watching the same thing. So the ratings for that same thing are great. Let's say I have then, instead of 50, I have 2. The ratings are still great, but it's just 2 people. That's the difference between viewership and ratings. Okay. So, going down. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I got that in. And the Raider says, Mile High Raider. It would have happened earlier. And we have Succoline Bot says our defense is too old. Cowboy Wrestler says Mile High Raider. I don't think so. I think the reason Mac was traded was that Mark Davis is broke. The Raiders are historically terrible when it comes to the business aspect of football, and that's sadly true. I remember. Let me tell that story in a second. Joseph Mandaritz. Joseph is gonna skewer me for butchering his last name. I apologize, Joseph. I 1,000,000% agree with you, sir. He says, I just got on. Did you folks discuss the poor play calling on the goal line? It's been mentioned. 1 yard from the end zone, you don't use Marshawn when he was dominating the whole game. That seems to be a theme. Marshawn dominates, but it's like, oh, we can't have him score. It's almost like somebody is calling and saying, hey, you know what? Don't let him get too big. I get that impression. When he was with Seattle, don't let him score, don't let him get too big. Why? Give him the ball. Something little screwy there. Because it happens too often for it not to be a concern. It should be a concern to Marshawn and anybody else. It should be a social justice concern. Yeah, I said that. Okay. Now, the rest says it's sad how the Raiders are going out last year's in Oakland. Thanks for the memories. Detective John says the team has changed so much in last year. They're still trying to find an identity, which is the problem. John's changed them into something that I don't think turned out the way he thought, because one particular error that Gruden made is in assuming that the players who are older are as athletically good as the younger players. One look at how fast Tyreek Hill is versus Jordy Nelson should dispense with that notion, okay? Just saying, okay? Welcome to Zenny62, everybody. 63 people here. Hey, thumbs up, by the way, if you enjoy what you're watching. Or, hey, and please comment. I'm trying to get to your comments. Detective Kimball says, laugh out loud. I love your optimism. And Jay Boogie says, Jay Boogie, how you doing? Jay Boogie says, you all should be proud of the Raiders. They have been competitive. They'll be 3-0 football games where only one half. That's true. Cowboy Wrestler says, playoffs. Are you kidding me? Playoffs? Talking about my thought that the Raiders could still make the playoffs. Mile High Raider says, it just didn't understand. What did he say here? Mile High Raider that just didn't understand if you're having a player like that, like Marshawn Lynch, and thinking about trading him, or excuse me, like Khalil Mack, and thinking about trading him, you have to fill the void first. That's how you do it, and we won't. Kung Lao, how you doing? Kung Lao says Raiders going 10-6. I'm calling it. They all got to do the fix things during the second half of play. The second half, like the first, and I could see it happening. Black Lion Supreme says, now you see why it took $100 million to get Gruden to Oakland, dealing with Mark Davis as an owner. Whoa, jeez. Jordan Mills says, hey, Zenny. Don't know this is far-fetched, but could Vegas bring in the Raiders because of the product they are, or renege on the Raiders because of the product they are presenting? No, because that assumes that there is this exalted thing on high. That assumes that the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. Now, how would that work? It would work like this. If the Las Vegas Stadium Authority put out a request for proposals from football teams to relocate, it had a contract that said, hey, look, if you are basically sucking in your current home city, you cannot come here and we cannot consummate the deal. Then what you were saying would be the case. But that is not how the deal is structured. So therefore, no, there's nothing like that. Dave Compton says, hey, Mr. Z, sorry for your loss. I hear you about being a longtime fan of the Raiders, but it seems to be that the team is falling apart at this point since the age of what's the age of John Gruden, what I think because of the age. Oh, do I think it's well? I look. I'm 56, but I'm Zenny 62. I think everyone deserves to be evaluated on an individual basis. I believe that there are aspects of the modern game that John just doesn't want to experiment. He's in this box that's not even directly related to Bill Walsh. It's indirectly related to Bill Walsh through Andy Reid. And John has not made a contribution to the schematic history of the West Coast offense, okay? It's just a fact. I mean, you want to talk about smash mouth version of it? Well, you have to look at Steve Mariucci for that. You have to look at Mike Shanahan for that. But John hasn't done that. And so I'm just being candid, all right? It's not that John doesn't want to, okay? It's not that he doesn't want to, but John is more a practitioner of the idea of that one can build a precision passing game. He is not a practitioner of the very Bill Walshian idea that I must innovate in football. Bill Walsh, who I've had the pleasure of interviewing, would tell you that you don't want to have the same set of plays or approaches, or the defense will zero in and eat you up. Therefore, you have to have different designs, different approaches. To you, it may look like use of a wishbone formation in a play that you haven't seen in 30 years, but to Walsh, it's keeping you off balance, but also taking advantage of, hey, perhaps you have linebackers that can't stop the tough 3-yard run out of that kind of formation, right? So John wants to think that way, but he hasn't quite mastered it. All right. But what it calls for, very simply, is thinking out of the box and having a desire to think out of the box and do so on a consistent basis. Thinking out of the box means also criticizing yourself, criticizing your approach, making adjustments, making changes on the fly. Folks, I'm not saying that's easy to do. That's hard to do. It's very difficult to do. Even Bill Walsh ran into his problems. I think Bill Walsh at one point almost ran himself cuckoo with that approach in 88. Some of you who are around my age who remember that. You know, he was going to quit football and everything else, okay? So, and he did, right? Bill took that point of view, which is logical, but it's stressful and challenging. So, John Gruden needs to modify that. The good news about today is there are so many different elements of the Walsh approach that are throughout the country at the high school level, but they're mixed in with package plays and other neat formations. John can quite literally borrow today, something not possible when Bill Walsh was active because we didn't have the internet. Now we have mobile. We have all these ideas. So John really doesn't have an excuse. So having said that, open it up. This reminds me of something that Leon Spinks said when was asked, how he came to beat Muhammad Ali. I think it was Ali. Anyway, he said, I ain't got no money. He said, I ain't got nothing to lose. I ain't got no money, and I ain't got no tifus. Well, right now the Raiders kind of look like that. So if you don't have, so the Raiders don't have anything to lose, why not just let it all hang out? Black Lion says, no way. I believe for 1 minute that Chucky thought Mac was going to be traded before he took the coaching job. Hey, John Marks, how you doing? And John Marks says, John Marks says, how is it that I can't see your notifications anymore? I don't know. Cowboy Russ says, John Marks, do you have your paper bag ready? Oh, boy. One Stop says Raiders are going to be good, especially now that Jordy Nelson's getting untracked. Black Lion says, one love. G. Taylor says, I'd give up NFL before Netflix or Amazon Prime. But would you watch the NFL on those two? And how much would you pay? Ash says, no. It wasn't poor play calling on the goal line. It was poor execution. And he says, Cohen Hudson down too low. Defensive tackle climbed over the 77, got inside. 72 got beat inside. Watch the tape. I look at it this way, okay? When I hear someone say something was poor execution, my other question is, are you not giving the defense credit for understanding that play is what you might do? Today, this is my philosophy. I think it's ridiculous to expect players to succeed at running a play against a defense that's supposed to stop that play. You have to assume that their players are good enough to stop your players. All right? You have to assume that. Because once you assume that, you start thinking creatively about how to get around their talents, how to take advantage of what they can't do. But if you assume the other one, you know what? You're going to be in situations like that again and again and again. Well, they should block, but they didn't block. You will find yourself out of a head coaching job if you're Gruden and you keep doing that faster than you realize. So as far as I'm concerned, in the modern NFL, no coach can afford that kind of thinking. That certainly worked for Vince Lombardi. Well, I was about to say that certainly worked for Vince Lombardi in the Packers in the 60s. But here's a little-known asterisk, folks. Vince Lombardi had adjustments in his passing game. That's right. If a receiver was given an out, but he saw a chance to run a fly, he'd run the fly. So the Packers' offense was actually more flexible than history tells us. Keep that in mind. Now, Jorge Ortiz says, I think it's likely that it was Mark Davis who made it clear to Gruden and McKenzie that he wasn't going to pay Mac $90 million. I agree with you. I think this is all a child of their Vegas expenditures. I really do. But if you know you're having that problem, and I've said this before, go out and get new corporate sponsors. Talk to the league. Call Tim Cook at Apple. Make a deal. One Stop says, Raiders were playing 100-degree weather with black jerseys on. They had nothing left in the second half. But One Stop, you plan for that. If you know you're going to face that kind of weather, then everything has to change. Your game plan, your formations should change. If you know you're going to have that problem, then don't run as much. Throw. Why? Because it's more efficient picking up those yards on a per down basis than hammering your fullback in when you know it's that hot. And at some point, everybody's going to wear down. All of that should factor into your game plan. We're talking about human beings, not machines. One Stop says, thank you. And Cowboy Wrestler says, John Marks, how you doing? Ms. McKenzie, 85, says, Seahawks Super Bowl interception at the 1-yard line. The catch that killed a dynasty. Yep. Ash says, Marshawn didn't sell it on the right sweep. He went 1 yard and stopped and became a spectator. So Donald Penn got turned inside when Lynch, Donald Penn turned inside, he says. What he says. Donald Penn turned inside. Where do you have this? Oh, boy, I'm way back, aren't I? Probably have to skip over some of these. These things are coming in hot and heavy. And let's see here. Oh, yeah. Okay. He says when Lynch took himself out of the play, that's why 4th and 1 failed. I understand that it failed. I'm simply saying that it shouldn't have been called at all the way that was called. All right. And, you know, and maybe that's the time. I mean, why run that formation? Why not a power I set? You know, those are questions. It's 1:43. I'm going to stop in about 5 minutes, but because I've got a busy Monday. But there are, holy cow, 63 of you here. Please thumbs up. Thank you. You've got a lot of comments here, folks. And Mile High says Raiders need to provide some energy. I'll tell you what, we'll pick this up tomorrow. But your response has been fantastic. I can tell a lot of you have a lot of ideas and concerns. Charles Rhodes, how you doing? And Jose, I think what I'm going to do is take this and start my own little social network on Oakland News Now, because I've played with code to build one, and bring, as I say, bring the party, bring it so that we can continue the party someplace else, right? Yeah. So anyway, Marks. Oh, by the way, my last bit of news, which you may have heard, is that the Raiders have announced. Well, the Raiders haven't announced anything. I'm announcing it. Raiders gave the Coliseum Joint Powers Authority a contract proposal for the lease extension that said we will sign a lease to remain at the Coliseum as long as it has this clause in that you don't sue us. And the JPA board said, yeah, right, we're not going to sign that. So the Raiders have no lease. All right, that's where we're at. John Mark says goodbye. Well, John Marks, I got your email. I'll get back to you in a timely fashion. Jay Boogie says they're talking to San Diego now. Well, that San Diego news is months old, okay? Just because somebody put that out there, let me explain. That's months old. I know what Jason wrote, but that San Diego news has been out there for some time. It's old. Let's just all sit back and see what happens, because look, the Raiders they can't go on ad infinitum. They have to at some point sign a lease with somebody to play at somebody's stadium next year or the year after, and the year after that, right before Vegas is ready. They have until December. I don't care where they go. It doesn't matter if it's Coliseum. Doesn't matter if it's San Jose. It doesn't matter if it's Timbuktu, which would be interesting. They've got to wrap this up by December. We'll talk about this tomorrow night. Everybody, thank you so very much. I mean, these numbers are fantastic. And I'm going to wave bye. And Andrew says, do you think Mark should sell the team? Yeah, actually, I do think Mark should sell the team. It's right now, it's worth $2.5 billion. He could, considering building a new stadium, he could get $3.7 billion for it. Okay. That's me. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night, John. Good night, John. Good night, Mile High. Good night, Jay Boogie. Good night, Steelers. Good night. What was that TV show used to all say good night to each other all the time? Was that the Brady Bunch? They used to look up and say good night, good night, good night, good night, good night. I feel like it's like the Brady Bunch, but it's like 50, 65 of you in these squares. Good night, good night, good night. Good night, everybody. Good night. See ya.